My name is Kay Petty, and I am a real estate broker. I've been selling land and farms and houses for 37 plus years now, full time. And today our topic we're beginning with is the Code of Ethics. The underneath all is the land. We as realtors sell land, whether we realize it or not, even when we're selling houses. It's the basis of all that we have. It's our earth. And so underneath all of the land, underneath all is the land, is part of the preamble of our Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice through the National Association of Realtors. So the land is very important to us. Even those people that just sell houses, they begin with a subdivision. It was a farm. You start with a farm, a large piece of property. And from that if we look back, our nation, as our United States grew, that's all we had was land to begin with. And so from that point, we went forward and everybody had their territories and they formed their way of life and learned to work the land and manage the land, raise their crops, grow their food, raise their families. So if we look at that preamble, under all this land, it really is true. That's where we began from the beginning actually of time, but especially if we look in the United States, we as realtors that are selling this land, it all begins there. So those that sell houses, it began with the land. The commercial properties, all the shopping centers, it all began with the land. So we're taking that topic and we're going to expand on that so that we all know the basis of what we should do when we are going to be selling a piece of property. Even when you're selling a house that is on just a lot, it all began as a farm somewhere. If it's not connected to city sewer, it's going to have a septic tank. So again, that septic tank and how that septic tank works is going to be all a part of the whole home site and the space which this family is going to be living and growing and raising their families or enjoying for whatever time that they are there. We're very fortunate that we have our listing forms that we can use whenever we get ready to sell a piece of property. And those forms are updated every year. And so we pull those forms out and we should take step by step and look at all the information that is in those forms. When we get ready to list a piece of property, it asks us for the legal description of that property. And even if it's a house or if it's a big farm or a small piece of land, they want the legal description of the property. You've got to know what you're selling when you're selling a piece of land. That description is going to identify where that property is. It's going to be where someone can pick up that piece of paper, your listing agreement, go right to and know where that property is. It identifies that property, just as our names and social security numbers and our home addresses identify who we are and where we're at. The more information that we can put in a listing when we are beginning, the very beginning, do it right the first time, we're going to have all the details about that piece of property, even if it's just a house in 5 acres or 10 acres or 20 acres. So when we start the listing agreement, we're going to ask that seller for particulars. But before we go and meet with that seller, there's a few things that we're going to want to do. We're going to want to pull our tax cards. We follow our listing agreement, pull our tax cards, get a copy of the deed, read any restrictive covenants that is there in the deed or the subdivision restrictions, and know exactly what that piece of property is. When someone picks up our information that we've put in the MLS, they should be able to go directly to that property and know that it is 5 acres or 10 acres or even an acre and a half or just a lot in a subdivision. And there should be enough information on that listing agreement to tell them where the property is. We have references such as a map and parcel number. as we go in to look everything off our tax cards, we can pull a map and parcel number if it's in a small subdivision or even in a big tract of land. We're going to see our acreage that's there. We're going to see deed book and page numbers. We're going to be able to go back and research and see what restrictive covenants are in that property. And all of that is really good to include when you're listing a piece of property. You need to be able to pick your listing up and have basically what I call a roadmap. And that roadmap is going to take you from the beginning of the listing all the way through to closing. So that information is very important to put, and be sure that you define all of it. And you want to be sure that you include any restrictive covenants, though any information that would help someone as far as the identity of the property goes, where they can go directly to that property. One of the questions that people often have is Greenbelt. Tennessee describes Greenbelt. All the states are going to have their own parameters of what Greenbelt is in each state. You can easily go online, do a Google search, and basically get a piece of paper that explains what Greenbelt is. It's not that difficult to understand. Whenever you're working with Greenbelt, you're talking about property that's 15 acres or more, excluding the improvement of the home that's on there. Or it could just be a tract of land, but it's going to be, Greenbelt is considered 15 acres and more that's used for some type of agricultural purpose. It could be a truck farm, it could be a vegetable garden that the people are raising to sell at the farmer's market. Some people have very large tracts that they'll do tomatoes and different things to sell at the farmers markets, or at the co-ops that they work with the food co-ops. You could have people that have horses and maybe give riding lessons. They have the horses there, take care of the horses. They're using it for that. You have people that crop farm. We're talking about larger tracts of land. But anything 15 acres and over that is used for an agricultural purpose, and it is all defined in the Greenbelt law for the state of Tennessee, and that can even include timber that is used for an agricultural purpose. So that's Greenbelt. You need to go online, look it up, and read all the parameters about Greenbelt. It'll give you a little bit better insight into what Greenbelt really is. Greenbelt with timber is going to be a little bit different than Greenbelt where they have annual crops or food crops or animals that they give horseback riding lessons, or they trail ride and teach different things as far as all that goes. It's all tied into the land. Maybe they raise cattle, sheep. That's all going to be different because you're not going to take in a timber farm, you're not going to have $1,500 up a year in profit. Usually when you put a property in a Greenbelt, the prior owner has had it in a Greenbelt before, and if they have it in a Greenbelt, they have their own reason for having it there. They could be crop farming, they could be doing some other agricultural uses on it. Cutting hay off of it is an agricultural use. They could be selling the hay off of it. Usually when you put a property in a Greenbelt, they want to know that you're going to be doing some type of activity there, that you're going to generate $1,500 or more a year in a type of agricultural activity. You don't have to do the same thing as the prior owner did, but you'll have to fill out the papers and say that you are doing an agricultural activity. When we go to closing, that is one question that most attorneys do ask from that new owner: are they going to keep it in the Greenbelt? If that new owner does not keep that property in the Greenbelt, then they're either going to have to pay 3 years of what they call rollback taxes. And that's the difference on the tax that you would have if it is reduced in Greenbelt versus take it out of Greenbelt and you're not using it for agriculture anymore. The tax rate is going to be a little bit higher. And again, that only includes land. That does not affect the house taxes. So generally speaking, when you go to a closing, the closing attorney at the title company will ask you, are you going to keep it in Greenbelt? If you don't want to keep it in Greenbelt, or if it's a subdivision that big farm that was in Greenbelt for years and years and years, and now it's in 5-acre parcels, and of course that's not going to keep it in Greenbelt, rollback taxes have to be handled. And that would either be handled by the new owner or this person that's selling it. chances are the person selling it, if they're breaking it into smaller tracts, they're probably going to be expecting to pay that rollback tax themselves. But the rollback is the difference between what is in the agriculturally based, which is a less amount of taxation, and an amount that's less than the 15 acres and not in an agriculture base. So we have to be prepared for that, or we're going to get a surprise, because they always ask that. And if you do not go, if that owner, that new owner of that property does not go and put that back into a Greenbelt, then somebody's going to come looking, either the seller or they're going to start looking for that new owner to pay those rollback taxes. So, and that's usually addressed at closing, so you shouldn't have to worry about it, but you need to be aware of it. And that is also in our listing agreements. Oftentimes, and it should, the question of surveys comes to mind. It's really important when you list a piece of property that's got really any land with it at all. Either you're going to have a survey that's recorded if it's a platted subdivision, or if you've got a farm, it's going to have had a survey on it at a given point in time. One thing that I have learned just over the years, just even really recently, that survey is going to be really important with title insurance. You always want to be sure that you've got a copy of the most current survey. Now, in some counties, that survey will be recorded at the Register of Deeds office with the deed. They usually have a plat recorded. If it's gone into a subdivision, they'll have that subdivision plat recorded. If you've got a good-sized farm, a lot of times they will record that. Every Register of Deeds office is just a little bit different to the practices that they have adapted to, so it's always something that you can ask. It's another part of your due diligence when you're listing a piece of property. Ask that seller, do they have an updated survey on that property? And if they can't find it, they'll probably remember who that surveyor was that did the survey. And you can always go back to that surveyor. I have found surveyors in every county that I have worked with to be just most generous, even as busy as they are right now, to take the time and go and try to help locate that survey if it's not already recorded at the Register of Deeds office. It's also very important to be sure that it's up to date. And if you're not sure if it's up to date, when you get ready to close a piece of property and there's a title search done, and it's got very much land to it at all, they're going to go back and research that title. And they want to be sure that the legal description in that survey or in the title description of that property matches and closes, if at all possible. It goes from one point all the way around the perimeter of the property and closes to where it's there. When they're doing the title search on the property, after you sold it and you're getting ready to close, if they do a title search and that survey does not match and is not where someone could actually go out and find the points of where the surveyors at a point in time has put down stakes and located and nailed pins in, and they do not know and it doesn't close, and it could even happen if you had someone put two properties together, one in one county, one in another, but they join in the middle somewhere. If there is not a clear definition of where that property is located, chances are that title company that's going to insure title, and when you are borrowing money on a piece of property, lenders are going to want title insurance, and it's a good thing to have title insurance anyway, but it's going to have to close. And close by meaning going from one point all the way around the perimeter of the property and match. And if it's not where the title company that reads that legal description that the attorneys at the title company give, they have to have that correctly or they will not insure title. So that's something really important when you're listing a piece of property or if you're looking at writing a contract on a piece of property. Ask for all of that information. Be sure that you can identify what you're selling, whether it's 5 to 10 to 15 acres or it's 100 acres or 500 acres or 5,000 acres up. Be sure that the title makes sense with that and it's clear and understanding. If you don't, you may reach a certain point and you think you're going to closing. At the very last minute, the title company may call you, the attorney's office, and said that they have taken that and submitted it to the title company for insurance, and if it does not close and look the way they want to, they can turn around and request a newer survey or an updated survey, and that's going to delay your closing. And as we all know, surveyors and soil scientists are very, very busy, and to get someone to work you in at the last minute may be a little bit of a challenge. So if we plan ahead and look ahead, we can start to address any issues we could have down the road by being prepared when we first begin and list a property, or when we first look at showing a piece of property and that buyer is interested. Ask your questions, do your due diligence, know what you're selling. That way, there's no surprises, because surprises are fun for some things, but at a closing table, it's not good. So you want to be sure you have everything correctly, and that's our job as professionals, is to ask questions and try to be sure we know as much as we can, and if we don't, ask. Most people are more than willing to help. For those of us that are selling homes in residential areas that are inside the city limits of any of our counties, 9 counties that we serve here at MTAR, if we have city water and city sewer, we don't have to worry about septic tanks. That's already been taken care of. They provided the utility service to that subdivision. It's all public utilities. They're served by whichever group is serving whichever county they are for that subdivision. So they've got water and sewer. They're not really worried about where does it go whenever your dishwasher runs and goes out, your washing machine runs and goes out, your flush a commode, the bathtub runs, the shower runs. Most people don't, in subdivisions, even care where it goes or what happens to it. It's different when you live in the rural areas. The rural areas are served by city water, we hope, most of the time. Always great to have a well. But they're going to also have septic systems. The septic systems are going to be in place of having city sewer. So homes that are served by city sewer don't have to worry about a septic tank. Homes that are served by a septic tank, that's something that you need to pay attention to when you're doing a listing, even if it's just a residential listing in a small 5-acre tracts. You're going to want to know where that septic tank is. When we go to list a piece of property, and we probably are going to know ahead of time by looking up the information on that property. We do our research before we go and meet with our sellers. They're going to list the property. Or we do our research before we take that buyer out to look at a piece of property that has a septic system. We want to know, is it served by a traditional septic system? What type of septic system? How many bedrooms? Most of that information now is available online. The Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC, has a website that if you go online, it's wonderful. It's very user-friendly. It's broken down by counties. And you can begin by going to the county that the house is located in or the property that's located in. And you can look by developer, you can look under a property owner. And of course, you find your property owners and previous property owners on our tax cards. We just go in there and look, and we can see whose name it is. We may see a builder's name. There's a lot of different ways that those files have been scanned in our file, but you're going to start by your county. You look up your county, go in, look up the map and parcel number, which you should have that. It's filed by map and parcel number sometimes. Sometimes it's the installer. Sometimes it's the homeowner, and it could even be maybe a long time ago the real estate agent that worked with the builder that was developing the property. So there's a lot of ways that you can find that property in the TDEC system. That's all online. It's free. You go in there, look it up. Sometimes you have to dig a little deeper than what you would just really find right on top. But if it's been scanned in there, there's no cost for you to download that and have the information that you can put with your file, share with your seller, share with your buyer. You would hope your seller had a copy of that from when they closed, but they might not. They could have lost it. But the buyer of the property is going to want to know, okay, where is that septic tank and fill lines? They're going to want to know that. All of that information is on the TDEC site. It's been scanned and emailed in, uploaded. If you can't find it, you may have to dig a little deeper. They're still upgrading the system and adding files into it. But that information is going to tell you where the septic tank is, where it's located, how many feet of fill line, and how many bedrooms that septic tank is approved for. And what they relate that to is the percolation or the absorption rate of the soil. And that's how they determine the amount of fill line that they have put out there from the septic tank that serves that particular property. If it's a 3-bedroom house, it's going to have fill line that match for a 3-bedroom house with a certain percolation rate of that soil. If it's a 5-bedroom, it's going to have that. Now they require you to have additional space there so that if for any reason those fill lines failed, that you could add on extra fill lines, go over to another area and use that area. But you're going to want to know where those fill lines are, because that new owner is not going to want to put their in-ground pool where those fill lines are and mess everything up. They're not going to want to build a garage over or pave over where those fill lines are. So it's really good to know where the septic tank and fill lines are. Treat them gently, take care of them, don't be driving over them, just different things like that. There is a ton of information on site that you can just read up, just get the general information, share that with your buyers. Hopefully that listing agent has all the information in there, in the listing information. Sometimes we look up that and it says cannot be found. And that's all we can do is just mark on our paperwork that it could not be located. If someone wants to go back later and locate that septic tank and fill lines, they can actually apply for that to be done and pay the fees, and environmentalists can go out and locate that tank, usually pretty easily with a probe and any information that they can kind of derive. And actually they're knowledgeable enough just looking at the land that they'll have a pretty good idea about where that septic tank is and locate the fill lines. So that is a whole huge subject that really takes some time, read up on it, become familiar with it. Nobody can be an expert on it other than the people that work in it every day that understand it. But ask questions, don't wait until after something's closed to decide you do or do not know where those fill lines are on that piece of property and get the questions answered. So it's an important thing, and we have enough paperwork in all of our forms, and there's enough people at the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation that can answer your questions. We've got people at a local level, and there's tons of information on the website. If you just go to the website and start reading, it will really enlighten you on all about the septic system and how it works. We have talked about septic tanks, and as it goes hand in hand with septic tanks, the soil that septic tank is in and that fill line is in is very important. The fill lines work the septic tank, and that's important. That's the reason I say we take care of our septic tank and our lines and we don't drive over them. Before we get to the point of where we have that septic tank and those fill lines, there is some steps in progress that has to go ahead of that. If someone is developing a subdivision, chances are, and it does not have septic or sewer lines already there, maybe it has city water, but it does not have city sewer, and city sewer is not going to be available. They're going to have to locate the areas that they can build the homes in that's going to be close enough to good soil that they can put the septic tanks in and the fill lines in, and they all work the way they need to. There's where comes into play our soil scientist. These people are specialized. They have studied for years. They have worked in the field for years. They have trained. They have taken classes. They have degrees in plant and soil science and all types of extra information and degrees in soil that just go deeper and deeper than what we would ever understand just on an easy basis. You know, we look at it and we go, oh, it's red. Oh, it's got clay in it. That's got a lot of rock. They know so much more than what we just do, just walking out on a piece of farmland and saying, okay, it's gray, it's red, it's got all these features. The soil scientists are really prime. They are somebody that we need, and I encourage everybody to develop a really great working relationship with all the soil scientists in the area that serve the areas that you work in. If you're going to be working on developing farms or selling land or anything like that, it's good to know a soil scientist and understand how they work. There's not as many as we need. It takes a while to get a soil scientist out. And a lot of times we wonder, where do we find soil information? While we're waiting, if we just want to look at it and we want to understand, Underneath, we go back to underneath all is the land. And here in Middle Tennessee, our soil is different than what East Tennessee soil is and East Tennessee soil is, and in different areas, all in Middle Tennessee, depending on where that soil is located, it's going to be different. Most counties have spent a lot of time doing what they call general soil maps. Those can be found online by going to the United States Department of Agriculture, going through the soil survey. It's online, it's free. They're keeping it updated really well. Every so many years, and it's not real frequent, there will be a soil survey done on each county. And it's spread out. I mean, when they do one for a county, it may be another 30, 50 years before they'll go do it again. Our soil doesn't change unless it's disturbed. If something's disturbed, then it doesn't have that soil structure that you had originally with it. And what the soil is and how well it will perk, as we all like to call that, it's the absorption rate of the soil. It just depends on where it's located. It has to do with the geology, where it lays on the landscape, what's around it, what's been above it, if it's been close to water and maybe it's overflown and been in a flood area for a time. The people that do the general soil survey work, they mapped those soils down to probably the smallest would be 5 acres. And even within that 5 acres, all the different types, there could be several different types of soil within that soil survey, just that unit of 5 acres. Now, they look at the geology maps, they look at the topo maps, they drill holes, they check to see with how deep it is to rock, because sometimes that delineation is the difference between the different kinds of soil that you have, say just based on, we've all heard of Bradyville and Talbot. There's a difference in those two, a lot of it by just the depth of the rock where you got a rock on it. All of that has been researched by these soil survey teams that have gone in all the different counties. They have been uploaded, they're online, they're free for us to use. The Soil Conservation Service people use those a lot of times when they're doing farm planning to help that farmer say, okay, this area is going to be better for wheat, this area is going to be better for corn, pasture and hayland over here might be a little bit better because it's not as high quality, but it's going to be good for pasture. They look at every bit of that. So what we have online, we can actually go to that website and pull what is called a soil map on that entire farm. It's good to know to do that, just to understand it does not make anybody an expert. It just gives you an idea of about what's there. And they will actually describe those different types of soils within that soil survey. You can go in and outline the boundary of a survey of a farm and pull everything up. It's going to give you a description of the soils that are there. And some of them are going to have these great big long names, but they were also given small, compact, common names too. And a lot of times they were named after maybe a little spot in the road that was close to where they did the soil pit for that particular soil at. So Gladeville soil is probably close. They found that pit and did that around Gladeville, Tennessee. Harpeth, close to the Harpeth River. You just, these different types of soil type, they always name them a common name. And most everybody, if they're used to looking at the soils, they'll kind of get an idea of what they're talking about on that. The soil maps that we find online through the Soil Conservation Service does not make us an expert at all. You cannot pick those up and read them and go, this is exactly what's here, because it's not. When the soil scientists map those, they're mapping for Soil Conservation Service, those are general soil maps. And they're saying within this whole scope of, say, 5 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres, all of that, we're saying most of that is Bradyville or Talbot or Harpeth or Nesbitt or Capshaw, or you just named the common name of the soil. All of those common names of those soils have got big names too. But all the basics are going to be online. It's free through the Soil Conservation Service to go in and pull up and actually look and see what a farm is mapped even before you get started well with it. And most of the time, our farmers on properties that have been farmed for a really long time, they used those soils the way they were supposed to be used. If it was really rocky, they may have let the cedar trees stay there. That way it was shelter or windbreak or something for the livestock. If it was something that was good for pasture land, they left the pasture land there. If it was something that was ready to be cropped, which is now a lot of the cropland now, what was cropland now, it is subdivisions in so many places, but they were probably some of the better soils that they did. So know that you've got access to the soil conservation maps, the topo maps that are in there, the descriptions, and that doesn't make you an expert in it, but it gives you some information to know, oh, that's wet, that's over there, that's going to flood. And you can also pick up on your flood maps. We have our flood maps that's in our tax cards that are online that we're able to pick up when we go online and do research through RealTrax and go into CRS. But there's also flood maps that will show on your soil maps when you go into the Soil Conservation Service. And you're immediately going to know somebody's going to have to buy flood insurance if they decide to buy in theirs. And they're probably not going to want to build in the flood zone because flood insurance is very expensive. So it gives you a little bit of a lead so that there's not anything catches you by surprise when you're going out. And it helps you really kind of know when you're driving over a property to stay away from certain areas that may be a little more wet, especially in the wintertime than others. So wonderful tool that we've got, does not cost anything to pull those soil maps up. And the thing is, if you don't understand them and you don't know how to use them or look them up, go to someone that will help you because they will. Chances are your managing broker has pulled soil maps before. They've worked with selling farms. We're in such a rural area. Almost everybody's been out on a farm and looked at soil maps and livestock and are very knowledgeable about things. But if you don't know, there's nothing wrong with asking. And go to your managing broker and ask for help. If they don't know, they'll call someone else in to help you. But it's a great resource that we have right to our fingertips. It does not cost anything extra just to go look up these things that were provided, and actually our tax dollars pay for it, so you've got access to it, and it's a good thing. Recreational properties. It's kind of a new term. It's a new buzz term that we all kind of like now because it's catchy. People that don't know anything about farms know what a recreational property is. Most of the time, recreational properties are farms. They can be farms. Most of the time, they're a larger farm. They're going to be 50 acres maybe or 100 acres up. And they're going to be a property that people are not going to be using it for quote-unquote farming. They may run cattle on it, but they also are using it for hunting, camping, riding their four-wheelers, trail riding, using all these wonderful vehicles that we have available to us now that's not just a four-wheel drive vehicle, that they can go. People love doing that. They love trail riding and going across the different properties and through mud holes and up the side of hills and just really enjoying being outside and going all over the land. They're also considered for hunting properties because you have a lot of people that hunt in the Middle Tennessee area. So some people buy what they would call recreational property, and they use it for hunting. That may be all they do on it. They may buy it and go, I'll build a house one day. But until I do, this is my chance to go out in the woods and enjoy photography, nature, horseback riding, hunting, hiking, picnicking, just absolutely go out and enjoy nature and everything it has to offer. The birders, people that like to do bird watching, people that want to get in the creeks and study the creeks, that maybe want to go spelunking, or we've got caves around Middle Tennessee. Wonderful thing that people enjoy in Middle Tennessee, if they don't mind going in these caves, is going into the caves that's located. Our landscape here in Middle Tennessee is very conducive to caves. I would say pretty much every county that's in our district here has caves. And a lot of people enjoy that. So you can four-wheel, hunting, target ranges. Sometimes these things are professionally set up. Camps and retreats. We see recreational properties used for a lot of things. Sometimes there's already a lodge or a home on them that people can use for people to come and stay, do for retreats for churches, do the four-wheelers, the side-by-sides, camp, fires. do everything that they could possibly enjoy and maybe stay there just as a retreat center. Churches like to do that. So a recreational property can be used for so many things. If it's got a lake or a pond on it, fishing. If it's big enough, boating. There's just so many different things that can go with a recreational property. And then when it comes to time, if it's not used for that anymore, it can be converted maybe into a subdivision. So there's a lot of use with that. And you could basically look up recreational properties and you just see tons of resources for that. And it's a good thing to use the property for until maybe down the road when somebody wants to put more money into it to develop and have home sites there. So recreational properties are a great thing. If you're going to be showing recreational properties or showing farm properties, it's really important to have your procedures down and know what you need to do before you go out there. If you've never shown a farm property before, and I talk to people that have not, and people just getting into, agents just getting into real estate, unless they grew up on a farm, they probably haven't shown a recreational property or a farm property. Chances are, they haven't, and that's okay. They just need to turn to their resources that they have available to them. Get their managing broker involved. Call your managing broker. Say, hey, tell me what I need to do. I have a friend that wants to list a farm property, and I don't know anything about it. They want me to list their Tyson chicken operation property. They want me to list this huge cattle farm property, and they want me to a fish farm, some type of farming operation. And I don't know what to do, but you don't want to tell that seller that you don't know what to do, but you need to know what to do. So you have to do some homework. The first thing I say is get with your managing broker, get them to go with you. If you're going to be listing a property that's a farm property or recreational type property, get them to go with you. Go look at it before you ever meet with that seller if it's a big farm, and learn something about that property. Go back to the things that you've learned by going online and going to the tax cards and the Soil Conservation Service and the soil survey and the different information that you have available to you. Do some research before you step off into that, and be sure you bring someone with you that's knowledgeable. When you're getting ready to show a farm property or recreational property and you've not really ever done that before, it's good to lean on the listing agent. And it's okay to tell that listing agent, I don't know anything about this. I've got friends that want to buy this, but I don't know. I don't know how to show it. Because the worst thing you can do, especially ladies, is to show up to show a farm property and you've got your high heels on. That doesn't work. To show up to show a farm property and you brought your little Volkswagen or your car, your Cadillac that does not have four-wheel drive, and you arrive and you don't know what to do. It's best to be prepared when you're showing a farm property. Look everything up ahead of time. Know how you're going to access the property. Sometimes when our weather is really wet, we're not going to be able to drive that property. If you've got four-wheel drive, ask that listing agent, is it accessible by four-wheel drive, or do we need to come prepared to walk? And as we all know here in Middle Tennessee, we get rain, we get a lot of rain sometimes, we get really muddy sometimes, and even if you have four-wheel drive, your four-wheel drive might not get you from point A to point B. Even your side-by-side might not take you that far. So it's good that you're prepared. You need to be sure you have a tax map. It's good that you have an air map. If you have your either cell phone with you or your tablet with you and you're able to get cell phone service where you are, you bring up that air map on that property. There's air maps in the CRS. We can go in and pull those air maps up. And if we've got the air map there, and we're able to get cell service where we're at, and either with our tablet or our telephone, we can see exactly where we are, and we can track ourselves using the air map that we've pulled and our phones or our tablets where we are. It's always a good thing to know when you're showing a farm, if you pull up to a gate and that gate is shut, you go through that gate, you shut that gate back. If that gate's open, leave the gate open. You know enough to look, but it's just a really code of the farm world. If it's open, it's okay to leave it open, unless this farmer ahead of time has said, I've left it open for you, shut it when you come back out. If you open it, close it back. You need to be very, very respectful of that farm if there's livestock on there, and not scare the livestock by driving fast through the property. Pay attention to where you're going. Be very careful for safety-wise, because even if you are in a four-wheel drive, either side-by-side, four-wheeler, or four-wheel drive vehicle, you can very easily slide, especially during wet times of the year, or you can even tip over. Be careful. It's just so very important. Be careful. Don't scare that person that you're showing is you're showing them the property, and put themselves or you in any kind of risk by going someplace you don't know where you're going, or you realize that you should not be there. Be very careful. Don't mind asking that listing agent, will they go with you? If they're going to know that property better than you will if it's a first time showing. Most agents are more than happy to represent their seller and to meet you there at the property, answer any questions, stay out of your way, or if you need to ride with them and show different points, they can do that. Most listing agents on big properties had rather go with you and help you have a really great showing on their listing than for you to go out on a property, not know where you are, get lost, and don't know the feature points of that property. So never be afraid to ask a listing agent to go with you. And when you're getting ready to list a piece of property, because we have so many different types of farm properties here, we have some farms that are just nothing but cropland. We have some that are nothing but different types of livestock on them. You've got your dairy farms, you've got your beef cattle farms. People have fencing, they have cross fencing. You have to learn to be careful on how some people have their gates. You may have hot fences through there, and you walk up and touch one of those things and you will turn loose of it pretty quick. It's good to be prepared before you go to show a farm. Most of the time you can pull the information online, which will include the survey, the soil maps if you want, the topo maps if you'd like that, and dig all the information that you can probably get. Ask questions, ask that listing agent questions. Know what you've got before you go out there, because if you just go out on a piece of property and tell that buyer, okay, we're here, you're on your own, that's not going to help you sell that property. So you need to be really aware of what you're showing. And again, bring in someone. If you're going to be selling a poultry farm that's got all these gigantic barns on it, if you don't know about those, and they are very complicated and have to be done correctly, if you do not understand how those Tyson chicken barns work, and in this area they're Tyson, in other areas there are different other integrators, what they call integrators, that they raise for. But if you don't know how a chicken farm operates, and you've had somebody that has come to you and said, I want to buy a chicken farm because I understand it's good money, chances are the person that's got that chicken farm listed, the barns, you need to ask them to go with you, because there's a really unique thing with showing those. You don't walk into one and spook the chickens and they all go to the end of the barn. You know what you're doing. And that listing agent, chances are, is experienced, and they will walk through that with you as far as showing that property. So, and you've got to be really careful about that. We don't have that many dairy farms around here, but dairy farms are much alike. You need to know the dairy farms. And, you know, those cows come in to be milked twice a day if they're actively milking them. And you don't need to just run in there and get in the way and spook the cows and everything like that. And you don't need to go tearing through the middle of beef cattle either on a side-by-side or a four-wheeler and spook them. That's just not good. So, and horses spook. So you have to be very, very careful. We have all of these horse farms all through Middle Tennessee that don't all have to be walking horses. We've got a lot of quarter horses here in Middle Tennessee, spotted saddle horses. Be very respectful of the farm property when you're showing it. It's just something that you want to do. If there's a home on the property and you're going to be showing that home, either show the home before you go out in the field and get muddy, or be sure you're using your booties to go in that house, and be very respectful of the homeowners. Take the shoes off before going in if you've gone out on the farm first time through, and just be respectful. the gates, our farmers are the salt of the earth here, and they will answer any questions for you, explain anything, but we need to be respectful to them when we're showing their properties, and it's not hard to do that. So just be prepared. It goes a whole way, long way. Another good source that we have available to us as realtors is the National Association has a group that's called the Realtors Land Institute. It's a fantastic organization that has membership across the United States and even into other countries, and the individual states have their own memberships. Tennessee RLI, we have here in Tennessee. They meet, they have programs, they offer classes. If you even just want to learn a little bit about dig a little deeper into farm properties and the economics of farming, the different types of properties that are out there, there's a class. And a lot of times you can get an online class to learn the basics of just selling farms there. But chances are also you've got an RLI member that's in your community. You can look them up. They're actually listed on the National Association of Realtors Land website under the Land Institute. So there's a lot in our Middle Tennessee area. There's several in our Middle Tennessee area that are great resources. Go take classes. People that specialize in land, most of the time they've taken a lot of the classes, and it doesn't have to be just farmland. We have members in our Land Institute groups that all they do is commercial properties. They may not, they may develop, they may go in and develop properties, and they have an RLI designation, which is an awesome designation to work on having because they've taken all those classes and focused on them, regardless of whether they are going to be, they're selling primarily farm properties, income-producing properties, even development properties to put shopping centers in, or even subdivisions. There's people that are involved in all those aspects of land development that belong to RLI, and that's the Realtors Land Institute. If you don't know anything about it, Google it, go to the National Association of Realtors website. You can look up RLI. You can see all of the designation classes that are available. Like I said, some are available online. We have offered a lot here at MTAR so that they're accessible. And a lot of them are 2-day classes, but you can get a 1-day class. And then there are some that are offered online continually through the year. They also offer these little mini series where you can go in and find the topics that you're interested in and maybe have just a really short mini series on they'll explain Greenbelt to you. They'll explain different facets of farming to you and development and what it takes to go in and develop a piece of farm property, taking it over into a subdivision or industrial use. There's all kinds of facets that go. And as we say, underneath all is land. So whether we're selling houses or farms or any type of recreational property, subdivision, everything, the basis of all that we have is our earth and we're everything that we put on top. So, we go from as high as we can go to the middle of the earth. And we have a lot of variation here. So learn what we've got. It's so important. And once you have appreciation of the dirt and the land, it will really make selling farm properties and even the houses that are just sitting on lots. You'll know where all that came from. It started with probably a gigantic piece of property at one time, and someone has taken it all the way through the stages to bring it into being a mini farm or even a subdivision. So never stop learning. Just if there's something you don't know about, go to the National Association of Realtors, look and see about the classes, take classes, never stop learning. It's a wonderful thing. Information is being added daily. So know you've got your resources and go to the source. Don't assume on anything. You have a wonderful resource, and by being a member of the National Association of Realtors and MTAR, you have tons of resources. So take advantage of those and use them. Today, we have covered a lot of topics, and these topics you can go back and pull out and review and re-listen to and maybe dig a little deeper in to get a little more information. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's number one. And remember, code of ethics, if we don't know, we need to ask. We need to partner with someone that knows, whether that be our managing broker, another agent in the office, a listing agent. There's no reason for us to go out into new territory without a guide, because you need a guide to go into the new territory. Keep in mind when you're doing your listing agreement and you're selling land, be sure you write down and get all the information, the map and parcel numbers, do your research ahead of time, pull the deeds. If you have questions of whether or not the survey is going to need to be updated, go to your source then. Go to your seller, go to your title company, go to your surveyor, see if anything needs to be updated before you do the listing or soon after you've gotten the listing, so that there's no delay once you have an offer to purchase on that property and research is being done. Preparation is the key to productivity. If you do your work ahead of time, it will make it all flow and be much easier as you finish up. So that's really huge key point. Pay attention to your Greenbelt and rollback taxes. Know what you're selling. If it's in Greenbelt, is that new owner going to keep it in Greenbelt? Understand what it is. Look it up online. It's so easy to understand. If you have questions, go back to that title company, go back to that owner, ask. It's fine. Ask. Septic tank information. Go online to TDEC, look and see if you can gather any information. If you can't, go back to your local source with the county, ask them, have those files been uploaded? Are they going to be uploaded? Do they still have paper copies in their office? Do as much due diligence as you can. It will really pay off in the long run. Soil information, go back to the Soil Conservation Service. Every county has got a Soil Conservation Service, and you can go back to them. They can help answer questions. They can actually answer program questions that they may have in play. They can help explain the soil maps to you if you've got questions as far as that goes, what type of programs that they have, because they actually do have programs to help the farmers that are farming the properties. Learn about those properties before you go out. If you don't know what a commercial chicken operation is, learn about that. If you don't know anything about dairies and you've been asked to show a dairy, find out about that. Horse farms, there's all different breeds of horses. Some are handled different than others. Some of the breeds are handled differently than what some others are. Your spotted saddles, your walkers, your quarters, you're going to have a different type of setup a lot of times for the different breeds of horses. Your recreational properties, be prepared to show a recreational property or a farm property with the right equipment. Go get you some galoshes. Be sure that you've got boots, wading boots if you need them, because you may just have to walk through a creek or down to the edge of water, and you're not going to take a vehicle down there. Be prepared to have four-wheel drive, side-by-side, four-wheeler, whatever you need. If it's too slick and dangerous to be on a vehicle, even a four-wheel drive vehicle, when you're showing a property, a farm property, a recreational property, get off and walk. Keep everybody safe. Keep a pair of boots in your car. If you're going to be out doing this all the time, keep a couple of pair of boots in your car, because it's going to come in handy. And AAA will not, chances are, come to the backside of a 200, 300, 400 acre farm and pull you out a hole if you get stuck. So you need to be prepared and don't go off into a situation if you don't know where you're at. Just be safe, be knowledgeable, ask for help. It's okay to ask questions, and be safe and go sell property.